Hello everyone, welcome to Good Geek Gaming. I'm Nick on the side of the comms, of course, Justin, providing audio commentary and his own brand of madness where applicable. So, news in the world of Switch, and it's interesting news, I suppose. Oh, it is very big interesting news, I would say at least. And it has to do with the issues concerning, well, basically the size of the game, or how the games will come to us. Don't worry, this will sound less complicated as I explain it. So we all know Nintendo Switch cartridges, right? Those little thingies that they've been producing and selling for like, when did the first DS come out? I mean, technically you gotta include Game Boy in here since cartridge doesn't include them too, so whenever the first Game Boy came out, good god. Early 2000s, like late 90s, I think? I don't flipping know. They've been doing this for a very long time is what I'm trying to get at here. And they're not changing that format with the Switch 2, we think.
We don't 100% know for a fact.
Yeah, so basically we haven't heard the news, and let me just clarify something going in, right? Normally we don't do many worry in the world of leaks on this show. At least when it comes to like smaller time, possibly unconfirmed leaks. So as we're going to be approaching this video, it's more going to be our own speculations on it. We're not going to be taking this as God sent. What we do know from this, we will say, and what is leaked, we will tell you. Beyond that, we leave to your interpretation.
It's
just a little bit of nice food for
some level of interpretation. Leave it up to some level of gospel. It could be true, it could be not, but don't say leave it out of the wind. For all we know, it could be true, and we just don't 100% know yet.
True. As the article I'm going to be actually showing you guys, the gamer, or telling you guys, says, we could be missing details, facts, a bunch of stuff here. It's just the fact that we're telling on it because this is the Switch 2, and it's actually pretty interesting to just think about, if nothing else. So, right, on with the video. So, apparently, the story goes that there's going to be if this turns out to be true, this will be catastrophic for game preservation. So, as I was saying about the cartridges, right? Well, the way they're approaching game cartridges seems to be changing with the Switch 2. Now, for those who don't know, the Switch 2 has this shtick called, Game Keys? Yeah, Game Keys. And what these basically are, is they're basically cards, right? They're the same look as the cartridge. They're basically the cartridge on the outside, but they don't actually have the game on it, which is interesting. In fact, what they have is just a clearance code, for lack of a better term, that lets you go on the store to download said game. So you're going to have to still download the game from online to your console. It's just the cartridge only lets you do that for free because, you quote-unquote own it. So basically, it's a license. It's a cartridge license, effectively, is the best way to say it. So that's the method by which this seems to be becoming most prevalent. From what we know, actually, how am I... Yeah, let me just say it to you like this, right? So according to early reviews or early releases or early just hands-on stuff of Switch 2 games in Japan, a good chunk of the games coming out are game card. And this has raised a lot of concerns among the game preservation community, pretty much, because if the game cards are nothing more than just licenses on a piece of plastic, there's no way to actually preserve games. For those who don't know, Nintendo has kind of been the bastion of physical-only games for a long time now. Like, they have been, at least up until possibly this point, still very much been kind of into that idea, whereas everyone else, like PlayStation and long since PC, in fact, I think PC kind of started this whole shtick, went completely digital. So everyone has kind of been, there are some people who are like, sure, digital only is fine, but there's a lot of us, myself included, who still prefer the idea of having our thing in our hand. And there's actually been a few cases in history where that's actually proven to be a good thing because, the companies can always take that thing away from us. Ubisoft, I'm looking at you. But anyways, that's a story for another video. So yeah, this has raised some alarms among the game preservation community because, well, how are you going to preserve the games if they're all just licenses? And whenever the Nintendo shop goes down, which it can, and it has happened, they don't happen for a very long time. I think they only shut down the Wii shop, 3, 4, 5 years ago? But they do happen. And once that happens, all those games go poof into the wind. Now, on a side note, if memory serves, Nintendo has never been particularly interested in game preservation for the longest time, so this is where I kind of put in my own conjecture here and say this is not exactly surprising tact coming from them. They've never really cared too much for game preservation before. They kind of have now, but yeah, it's like they have kind of in the most recent times, but why really start now in a way? So yeah, and this is where we kind of get into the more recent interesting tidbits that have come up. So basically, Arc Systems Works, a company that apparently was going to work with or has worked with Nintendo in the past, actually had their systems leak. and or had their hack, which revealed some details on their systems related to the Switch 2. Supposedly, let me just see here where I can actually quote this for you here. Here we are. Forgive me, I'm just rifting through my articles here. I have like 3 of them. You'd think I'd have these preloaded, but no, I'm just anyways.
No.
Supposedly, the hack basically shows, or has pretty much shown, that there's these three kind of options that Nintendo is going with here, right? You have the digital download card, or digital download, which is basically just put your game on the App Store, or Nintendo Store? Switch Shop? It's been a while, I can't remember what they're calling it at this point. I have too many shops I manage. Forgive me if you hear my clock in the background. And that's one method. The other method that is being going with here is the 64 gigabit cartridge. Now, from what we understand, from what we've gotten from our friends over in the Far East, most games, as of right now, are not in this format. I think there's only a few games that are in this format currently. I think Breath of the Wild is, and according to reports, ironically, Cyberpunk 2077 is, because some dingus wanted to put that on the Switch. I mean, I admire CD Projekt's attempt here, but I'm just getting some hard flashbacks to the PS4 right now. Anyways, I'm getting sidetracked. The point is, that's the second option. And according to what we know, the third option is what is codenamed Potions. So basically, the game cartridge, and it's basically just, that's it. You get one of these 3 options. A digital release, a 64 gigabit cartridge with the game included, or the game key, which again is codenamed Potion in their systems. That's what we do know, according to the leak. This, like I said, has fueled the kind of speculation, or kind of fueled the current theory, that the reason why so many game cards are so prevalent at the moment is because it's the cheaper option. Because most game companies, when they're given this choice, are going to be pushed towards the cheaper option, which is just, the game card. It's not fully eShop digital, so they can still kind of, sell the game physically. My guess here is maybe they get a better cut out of it. But that's just a theory of mine. But, they also don't have to go through the same price tag, whatever that may be, to make or get from Nintendo a full 64-bit gigabit cartridge, which not every game needs that. These are also Switch games we're talking about here, right? Like, if this were freaking, freaking PS5, I'd say that's not much. But these are Switch games we're talking about here. There are going to be very few games that require that level of size. And so for most game companies coming in, or most game studios coming in, you could say, would be more accurate, giving the option of a physical 64-bit cartridge for like a 40, 50 gigabit game, something more like that, might not be worth the cost. So it's the idea that most people are going to the game card purely for the cheaper option. And again, this is where the idea of the whole game preservation issue comes into being. So yeah, that's kind of where we're looking here with the game card. Again, this is not the first I don't want to say conspiracy for some reason, but controversy is the word I'm looking for, that came out of the Switch 2. Of course, the first being the whole business of the increased prices, and now there's this whole issue.
The price of the console itself.
Yeah, the price of the console itself, which in fairness, that's always going to be a sore point. They've been fighting over console prices since consoles first became a thing.
Yeah, that's been a sore point for everybody for quite a while.
So I think that's always going to happen. Like, every time a new console comes out, the unexpected elephant in the room is always going to be, okay, what's it cost?
Yeah.
And obviously this is going to be...
On a quick side note, I believe Xbox went and increased the price of their console not too long after the Switch 2 was announced.
Their console's already out, though, so what, are they just retroactively changing the price?
I can't remember it for sure, but I remember hearing a quick, small rumor that, like, they increased the price of their console for some reason.
Well, here, on a side note, ladies and gentlemen, let us figure that out right now for the sake of live feed.
Yes.
Price increase. This is happening live, ladies and gentlemen. Live on national television.
Let's see.
Microsoft increased the Xbox Series S price, but Amazon brought it back down even lower than before.
Yeah, that seems about right.
from Gizmodo. So I guess here, for the sake of the fact we're mentioning it now, I'm gonna throw it in the comment section. Again, everything we've talked about will be thrown in down into the comment section. So if you want to read these articles yourself, go ahead. I'm just gonna leave that there because it's not the topic of this video. But I mean, that's kind of funny. Not gonna lie. But yeah, getting back on the Switch too. Like I said, this is not the first bit of controversy that's come up. After, like I said, the whole business with the price of not the price of well, that is one of them, but price of the actual games themselves, which has always seems to be kind of just an excuse with the new generation to raise the price. I mean, there's people who say games have been more expensive. My personal take on that is like, I sit in the camp of the fact that yes, games have certainly got more expensive to develop. That is undeniable.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look at the ways in which games monetize themselves these days, they have also increased like tenfold. Like 5-10 years ago, well, not even 5 years ago, 10 years ago even, how many like multiple editions of a game did you see? 10 years ago, how many like, in-game purchases did you see? Quite a bit, sure, it was taken off back then, but nowhere near as much as you see today. And you just kind of extrapolate that over the course of an entire industry, right? Yeah, games are more expensive, but the ways in which they're being monetized and kind of sold back to us and whatever you want to call it have also increased as well. So a price increase on top of that, when you put that into perspective, at least in my opinion, just feels like overkill and just an attempt to line their pockets by justifying it with a cheap excuse. But that's just my opinion. So, yeah, that's the first controversy. Now we have this whole business with the console. When it comes to the cartridges, my personal takes on this matter is, I mean, I don't want to say I get it, actually. I don't want to say that. I get the fact that people are going to be pushed more towards the cheaper cartridge option because, as I said before in the show, not every game on the Switch is going to be as big as 64 gigabytes. Like, again, this is the Switch we're talking about. Yes, it's more powerful than its predecessor, but the Switch 2 is still the Switch. So let's say, 30, 40 gigabit games, generally speaking. I could be wrong on that, but it's just a bit of, back of the napkin, back of the head math. For many people, especially if you're in the indie scene, which a lot of Nintendo Switch games kind of are indie to some degree as well, a massive 64-bit gigabyte cartridge, 64-bit cartridge, there you go, is just not going to be worth it. It's just going to be overkill.
You're going to be having a whole bunch of empty space for nothing.
Yeah, and that's just going to be a bunch of money that they don't have to spend, so I can see in their case why they'd go for the cheaper option. That said, I do also see why this is a big alarm sign for the game preservation industry. Especially because, like I said, we've seen more and more push in this industry of the idea of not owning games. In fact, I think Ubisoft, with all bloody people, was like, people are going to have to get used to not owning their games, though don't quote me on that one. I think I remember that. But again, it's just
I don't know for sure, but I have a feeling it was PlayStation that did that. I'm not 100% sure.
Well, someone said it at the very least. I'm fairly certain.
Someone did say that. That is for
sure. Someone
sure.
did say that. But again, don't take us at our word for it.
Yeah.
For the sake of
we can't remember
consistency, I won't bother digging up articles in time. For the sake of time, I won't bother digging up that article. But you can pretty much find it yourself. I think it's fairly easy to find. But
yeah. The
point is that there's this been push in the games industry to go fully digital. And everyone is kind of like Nintendo because there's still that feel of physicality to it. So,
well, and the biggest thing, like, here's my take on it. The biggest thing is the fact that when you have physical, you are guaranteed to be able to play it. You are guaranteed, no matter what. If the apocalypse happens tomorrow, as long as you have the ability to get electricity, you will be able to play it. And that's the biggest thing that, like, some people don't appreciate, is the fact that there will be times where you're like, I don't have power, or I don't have connection to the internet, or whatever, blah, blah, blah. And you want to be able to play a game. Like, and not only that, but, like, there's collecting, there's nostalgia, there's a whole slew of things that goes into it. And at the end of the day, it should still be an option for people, especially if they're willing to pay for it.
That's the thing, right? The fact that it is on the table is there, but like I said, business is going to business, and most people are going to look at this and say, not worth the point.
Yeah, and that's the other half of it, too, is businesses, when you really think about it, should kind of come first on that level. And especially, like I said, because a lot of the studios, like some studios in the Nintendo sphere, don't, like, quite a few of them aren't exactly big AAA developers. They're double A's or, single A's in some cases. They don't have the money to be like, yeah, sure, we can afford a 64-bit giga cartridge with, like, nothing in it. And even if they did, most of the studios who would have that kind of money are too cheap to do it anyway. So it's kind of that question of, like, again, I can kind of understand where they're coming from. This is a problem for, like I said, game preservation.
of all the kind of consoles that have come throughout the ages, most people still collect, like I said, Switch cartridges and and Nintendo cartridges and stuff for whatever form they take, because they're not as big as something like a DVD for PlayStation or Xbox. Trust me, I know. I have collections of all three of them, and then some. They take up space. Nintendo Switch, you can fit like several generations within a single rack of a bookshelf, legitimately. So I can definitely see why a lot of people are concerned about this, because like I said, there goes that kind of game preservation, as Justin said, that kind of collecting aspect of it as well. And like I said, I've still seen game shows where people are selling like the original fucking version of Mario from way back in the frickin' day for the 64. That shit still work.
Mm-hmm.
So that market might just straight up dry up and die if this ends up being the case of everything. We'll see.
Well,
we'll
it
see,
wouldn't
though.
die. It's just chances are, when it comes to physical games that already do exist, nothing new would obviously be added, obviously. But
Well, yeah.
anything that already exists would gain extreme value very quickly.
Well, that's again within its own sphere, right? People collect these kinds of things for what they are themselves. That might add some extra value on top of that, certainly, but I think nothing will go change in terms of the pricing itself. But you might be wrong there.
But yeah, like people who do trading and stuff like that, yeah.
But again, like I said, this is definitely interesting to kind of see what happens. Again, the option is still on the table. Whether people take it, we'll have to see. And again, this is all just kind of what we've heard coming out of Japan so far. This is just the early slew of games that are coming out on the Switch. A lot of things do change in an industry or in a generation as the generation goes on. Maybe more people will kind of migrate over to the 64 gigabit cartridge as, sales start to increase. Because like I said, the Switch 2 is technically still unproven. It hasn't come out yet. Nobody knows how many sales it is. There's not a lot of hard data to work with here, right? They just have effectively last gen's data to go off, which, while extremely promising, ain't exactly gospel. So this might just be an attempt for them to kind of minimize costs until they see how much they can possibly earn back in return. Like, if you know you're going to have a smash hit game, sure, put it on the 64 gigabit cartridge. You might lose a bit of money, but you'll make back way more, so it doesn't matter. So, again, this might change as the generation goes on, or maybe, possibly, Nintendo themselves will add a fourth option, though I doubt that part. So, again, we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, that's kind of the show, and hope you all enjoy. Well, I should actually say, any closing thoughts, Justin?
No, not really. It is kind of just what it is at the moment. It's a very interesting thing to think about because, like, physical games are something that a lot of people are going to want to be able to continue having. So you kind of hope that doesn't just suddenly disappear because, like, even I myself, although I enjoy my free leisure of digital games, do also understand the want and drive towards being able to have physical. So, and I myself can enjoy it and want that myself sometimes. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, again, there's a nostalgia to it as well, right? I mean, this does kind of bring back, and I will say this is a kind of closing point. I was actually recently putting up Assassin's Creed Shadows on my PS5. Yes, I played the game, or I'm trying to play the game. I actually officially started it yet, but I am going to play it. For whatever that's worth. And the game itself was like 100 and, like, the entirety of the 107 thing I had to download from the disc, it felt like, so I had to sit there for a while. Oh, so it was kind of the other end of the coin where you have to sit there for an hour as the thing puts on your console. But then again, it's a lot faster than if you were trying to pull it from the network, so this is probably going to slow down times. Maybe this is also part of the reason why they have so much of this kind of hot swap mechanic that Switch is expecting. They're expecting a lot of digital back-end stuff. Anyways.
Yep.
Anyways, that's the show. Hope you all enjoyed. Let us know what you think down in the comment section. What do you think about this whole game cartridge thing, or game key thing, I suppose, or potion, whatever they're calling it. I'm kind of curious to see what the general consensus here. I think I have a pretty good idea, but prove me wrong, prove me right. We'll see what happens. And of course, like, subscribe, and comment. You know how this goes. You've probably been on the internet for more than 10 seconds. And have a good one, everybody. Later.
Have a good day.